Hey folks, here with our last video, kind of going over resolutions and final acts of our narrative. Now, keep in mind these are pretty short, so don't feel like you need to have multiple pages for each one of these sections of their story. These could be even just simple paragraphs, especially for a conclusion. It might just be one paragraph or even just a couple of lines. Um, Always keeping in mind our writing goal is to develop real experiences. So you're reflecting on something that you have experienced and try to explain what the meaning is. And I'll give you some hints on how to do that. And we're still working on constructing well constructed sequences of events. So going from exposition to rising action and conflict into sort of a resolution here. Uh, so First up is talking about climax of a story, and you may not necessarily have like a defined climax. A climax is like the heightened point in the story. It's like the moment of most tension. So if you're thinking of like Romeo and Juliet, it's where they are just about to like commit a suicide pact, and it's like horribly sad. That would be the climax of that story. You're like, oh my God, don't do this, don't do this, don't do this. And then they did it, right? Kids. Um, so that's what we're talking about in terms of like a story climax. So generally, this is usually the shortest part of the story. Like climaxes are building up to one scene, one paragraph, one event that is pretty short lived. I think about it at like a firecracker or a firework. We have this big long fuse and it's like getting closer, something's going to happen. Things keep complicating, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is. This is kind of what we've been waiting for this entire story. So in a personal narrative, this might be a lot more subtle or less dramatic than anything that Shakespeare might have written. This could be as simple as you actually making a realization. So your whole story was about building up to this realization that you made. There it is. Hey, I finally put the pieces together. Or maybe I finally did something. Like I've been trying all day to catch a fish, and finally, on the last moment, my last cast, I feel the hook, right? And maybe I just end it there. It doesn't have to be anything grand and momentous, but it's getting that action or maybe seeing something that you've been waiting to see. Um, you don't have to go for high drama. More what I'm kind of looking for, rather than a climax, is this idea of a resolution. So resolutions pertain more to when things are resolved. The story kind of wraps up, and it wraps up in a meaningful way. So I'll say this about resolutions is they should be inevitable, not predictable. Inevitable meaning your entire story has been leading up to this moment, this last final thought. And so everything that you've done prior to that needs to make sense for the realization that you made. I can't tell you about my story about hiking in the woods, and then my realization is, oh yeah, I need to buy a red car, not a blue car. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It needs to be connected. So as you are writing, as you're building towards your resolution, you should have this in mind. It's like, where am I going to stop things happening? Why am I going to stop there? And once I choose that, what effect is that going to have on the reader? How is this going to influence them? Because remember, you're writing this personal narrative partly for yourself, but partly to practice trying to get a reader to feel or think or realize something uh, kind of subtly, right? You don't want to tell them exactly what to think. You want to lead them to think that thing. And also, don't feel like you need to wrap everything up. I'm going to show you a prime example of a great narrative essay that brings up a whole lot of ideas, has an excellent resolution and conclusion, but it definitely does not wrap everything up. Mostly, what you're trying to go for a resolution is reinforce the meaning of your story, reinforce why this story is important to you. So, and I've got some steps to help you avoid some things and to do some other things to really nail that. And these ideas come from a writer called Cat Reynolds. I'll show you a link to his blog post where I got this from. So number one is don't tell the reader what the moral of the story is. Right? Let the reader realize that for themselves. And obviously, you're going to try to guide them to that with the actions and the things that you describe. And especially, don't tell the reader how to feel. Don't say, you should feel sad for me because this happened, or you should feel excited because I finally did this thing. Let the reader experience that emotion on their own, right? We're going to try to avoid those emotion words and instead try to describe these emotions. So, in order to do that, two things you might do in your resolutions are describe one final action or one verbal exchange between you and another character, or one visual image that you had, or one thought that you had, that could lead a reader to understand the point and the emotion of the story. Um, Feel free to include sort of personal reflection. You can think about I and myself and what you were going through here. But again, don't try to explain everything. Kind of let this happen, for lack of a better term, naturally. And I know that's not very good writing advice, but that's kind of what we're going for. And again, I say the best thing that I can do to explain what I'm looking for in writing a resolution is for you to read one, a really well crafted one. So this link here, that's just a short little blog post that I highly recommend you go read, that explains sort of here's what you're going for a narrative ending. And you're going to be reading a story, Superman and Me, written by Sherman Alexie, sort of a personal narrative about him and his relationships with books, basically, in comic books, how he learned how to read. Its resolution is, I love it because I'm an English teacher, and it encapsulates these 4 steps really, really well. All right, so take a read through that, see what you can pull out of the story, Superman and Me by Sherman Alexie. And good luck, folks, in writing your own resolutions. I'm super excited to see these.